Hello and welcome to yet another Lord Slar panel discussion where today we are looking at the second of the 60th anniversary specials, Wild Blue Yonder. And today I have with me Briar Hart,
Hello.
Joey of the Fresh Faced Comics podcast.
That's true, and you have caught me on a historic occasion. I'm talking about Doctor Who on the internet again. So,
How long's it been?
God, I don't even know. Definitely, I think we're coming up on like 2 years since I've done like
Yeah,
Doctor Who
when
things
when was
online.
the last time you posted to Security Kitchen?
Yeah, it's been almost 2 years. I think it was the
I'm
end of
looking
year
it up
thing.
now.
Well, I'm
Yeah, it was
sorry
like the
for
end of year
being an
thing.
enabler of your recidivism back
Yeah,
into
you
Doctor
are.
Who.
It's you're like a drug. I have to keep coming back to you, Dylan.
And finally, the leak master himself, Faries.
Hello. I wish I could say it's been 2 years since I made Doctor Who content on the internet. No, I'm just kidding. No, I enjoy it.
It's like you're a recovering addict, Joey, whereas he's just like so far in. He needs like hits every
I'm
day.
full of-
He's the junkie on the street that I found, and I want to help him.
Yeah, it was one look at Faries, you realise you needed to rethink your life.
Yeah.
will this be what I become?
Oh, dear.
All right, so obviously, usually with a panel discussion, we go in quite a structured format, talking about the different bits of it. But I feel with this story, it almost wouldn't make sense because it's quite a non-traditional story, which mostly revolves around the Doctor and Donna doing a kind of two-hander for the story. So I think let's just get into a discussion about it. So let's just start with Joey, since it's so long since he's made Doctor Who content.
Ooh.
What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? Just overall, anything?
Oh, yeah,
Anything at all?
just anywhere you want to start.
No, it was a good time. It was a great time. It was a fantastic episode. Uh, I find myself surprisingly like not as cynical as I thought I would be for just on the specials overall. Maybe that has to do with the fact that I've been separated from a lot of Doctor Who online discourse for a while now.
Lucky.
Maybe it's just the fact that these specials overall, I think, have kind of lured me into a false sense of security and just being generally enjoyable. Like the Star Beast, I thought was really good. This fucking phenomenal. I loved this one. The fact, I think, where its strengths truly lie, and where I think a lot of new Who stories like this are so successful is in the fact that it is a two-hander. Basically, it's David Tennant and Catherine Tate the whole way through. I don't want to like immediately jump back into Doctor Who discourse and be like and start complaining about 45-minute Doctor Who stories. But the fact that this is an hour, I think, really benefits it, and the fact that it's so minimalistic really benefits it. It reminds me of a lot of some of the best stories from Davies' first era. I think a lot of people have drawn comparisons to Midnight in the past day since it's come out. And yeah, I'd have to agree. It's the fact that it is so simplistic is what makes it so successful, and also the fact that it relies on larger concepts in examining the doctor companion relationship, and I think also in that regard, in examining that relationship, it kind of makes it a really successful 60th anniversary special as well. In that it's not doing it by like throwing all these different sort of cameos and previous actors that have played doctors and companions in it, like a lot of other stories. It's a 60th anniversary special in that it celebrates an aspect of the show by deconstructing it, which I think was probably my favorite aspect of the whole thing. I really, really loved it. So yeah, that's kind of
Yeah,
where I lie. Just opening
Some
thoughts.
something
absolutely.
that you didn't touch upon in that long list of positives, that I really also enjoyed about it. I think Doctor Who is at its strongest when it's doing like high science fiction concept ideas and
Totally.
Lovecraftian horror, which this story has in spades. This is very cosmic horror. Where specifically that scene, sort of towards the beginning of the episode, when they're looking out at the border of the universe,
Dude,
and
Oh, it's
that
so
shot
like
good.
alone,
first
Oh,
first time
that shot alone kind of fucked with me. I was like, wow,
first time
that's different.
first time in years, literal fucking years, probably close to a decade, that Doctor Who has given me actual fucking chills.
Yeah, it
Um,
yeah.
properly unsettled me. Like just
yeah,
watching that shot alone. Yeah.
really solid. Even later on, when we get the corpse of the captain floating out in
Mm,
space too, it's
yeah.
just the concept of the no things as well, which I actually adore that name. I think I saw some people being like, oh, what a goofy name. But what else are you going to call them? I mean, they're fucking fantastic. Just conceptually, it's great, and it's executed really well. I think the direction, for the most part, is really solid and, delivers on the atmosphere. Yeah, no, I loved the horror aspect of this most of all, I think.
I think what was most successful about it, and you brought up 45-minute syndrome, Joey, and the reason why that's often a problem is it feels like episodes don't have a chance to really build up into themselves, and often things don't quite feel earned or feel like they're going too fast. That's not at all the case here. It was proper Doctor Who, where the Doctor and companion land somewhere, they don't know what's going on, they have to go around, find out clues, see what's going on, like the atmosphere builds, strange things start happening, they have to work it out. And it's a brilliant concept as well to kind of throw that in the mix with great aspects of horror, almost slightly riffing a bit off The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, with the kind of paranoia of who's really who, as well as all sorts of other kind of, Lovecraftian elements, the fear of the unknown, the, going so far out that we're kind of beyond the normal rules that apply to the universe, which really adds a sense of great dread, but also awe, and it was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, obviously, I'm probably, from the vibe I get, I mean, at least from my conversations with Dylan, I'm probably the biggest New Who advocate here, probably. Is that fair to say?
Probably. That is definitely fair to say.
We are the classic elitist you're told to avoid.
Yeah, no, I'm probably, the biggest New Who fan here, and I did think, because obviously the Star Beast was last week, and I enjoyed the Star Beast. I thought the Star Beast was a good, solid introduction, with a few things that kind of faltered, but one of the things that I did feel was I could have really done with, an extra 10 minutes just to, sort of flesh some things out, kind of define some things. This was pretty much, pacing-wise, pretty much perfect.
Agreed.
The build-up was great, and the resolution, it didn't feel rushed. It made so much sense. And overall, I just thought generally, and kind of I agreed with, I can't remember who said it now, the whole thing of, I completely agreed with the notion that this is a 60th in it's showing a Doctor Who concept at its best. It's not, here's Peter Capaldi, here's Christopher Eccleston. They're doing things that, it's a good concept executed very, very well with two actors, frankly, I believe at their prime. I mean, this story would not work as well if David and Catherine weren't as good as they are, and also we, as an audience, did not know those two characters as well as we do. And I think that's a testament to not only them, but also the way those characters are written. Because with this story, it kind of hinges on the idea that you're supposed to notice kind of things that are off about the characters that they would never normally do. And that wouldn't work if we didn't know these characters. I was saying this to a friend the other day. Imagine if we had this story with, 13 and, the fan. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference between when they were possessed and when they weren't. You'd be you sound the same. I don't know. With this,
actually, I think you bring up a really strong point there in the performances being sort of off with the no things. I also think there just tells in the writing that they're off as well, but they're done in such a way that you have to look for them as the viewer, so it's actively engaging you as you're watching it, and I think a lesser writer probably wouldn't have been able to pull that off. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it too.
A lesser writer would probably have made it a lot more explicit that they were evil much quicker. Whereas they didn't really it takes you time to figure it out.
I wasn't quite sure of their the no things intentions at first. I wasn't quite sure if they were actually evil at first. And actually on the performances, I gotta say, there are a fair few David Tennant 10th Doctor moments that I really do enjoy. But overall I gotta say I've been preferring his performance as 14 quite a lot more here.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's a bit of a more subdued performance as well. It's sort of if the 10th Doctor grew up over 15 years and matured a little bit more, which I think is exactly the sort of thing you want, because it has been a while for the Doctor, and presumably the character should have matured by this point.
Yeah,
so
it would have been so easy to just have him play the hits. It would have been so easy to just do that and have him just pretend like nothing has happened in between. But you can feel the years that have passed, You can feel kind of the approach feels different. And I mean, I would argue as well, like in terms of on the writing end and even things like the music, it is like RTD1 grew up. Like I think Murray Gold's score reflects that really well because it's not as kind of
100%.
bombastic as it used to be. It's not as bombastic as it used to be. It's a lot more toned down, I feel.
I liked a Murray Gold score. And you have no idea how rare that is.
It was actually really good in this one. I wasn't a huge fan of Gold's score back in the Star Beast. This I preferred a lot more. In that, like, it's weird to say that I preferred it here because I didn't notice it as much, but it's because I didn't notice it as much. It wasn't as in my face. I really enjoyed it here, actually. It was very good.
Well, I think what's strange is you can also, if we go back, derailing for just a second, if we go back to, like, the late Capaldi era, I think a big reason Murray Gold left was because he was making a bunch of new music that wasn't getting used in favor of his back catalog. But there are certain episodes where you can see new tracks being used, and he does start incorporating more subdued synthesizer-y stuff towards the end of the Moffat run. That I like the direction he's gone in with these two episodes.
You're right, because Heaven Sent showed the kind of Murray Gold that we could have had.
Yeah, and this is just more, and this is just more of that, and I'm here for it. I like the mix between, you know, some of the more flares of Murray Gold music with the synthesizer-y weird shit that I think belongs in Doctor Who.
I loved the synth stuff, particularly at the beginning when they're like sort of just arriving on the ship, and you've got that like almost 80s kind of vibe. But then also equally towards the end when the real Donna almost dies, you get kind of that almost sort of sad piano rendition of her theme, and I think it really works in just heightening the scenes without being like super in your face. Oh my god, something's gonna happen. She's gonna die. Really like
or overbearing.
To be honest, I wasn't sure if she was going to. I thought it was entirely possible.
Is it weird that for a moment? Is it weird that for a moment there was just some like small fucked up part of the back of my brain that was like, oh, what if it's no thing Donna in the last special?
Yeah,
how
me
fucked
too.
up with that? Like, just for a second, I was like, oh, what if?
Well, I've got an idea, so I think it would probably be to kind of structure this a bit more. Kind of let's go through the episode chronologically and talk about each of the bits in turn, so we can make sure we've got kind of a thorough praising of a great episode. So let's start with the bit I hated, the start. Jesus Christ. If there's one thing I hate, it's New Who's really shit sense of humour. Mavity, it's not funny. It was completely out of tone with the rest of the episode, and it added absolutely nothing.
Here's the thing: I didn't like the first scene, but I kind of liked just them casually saying Mavity later on throughout the episode. That I kind of enjoyed, but the scene itself where it was introduced in, I was not a fan of.
Yeah, the scene itself where it's introduced, I'm not a fan of either. But I do like that you have this. The Doctor and Donna sort of interfere in this moment in history, and now it is actually shifting that. It has an effect on the timelines, and I think that's probably a small plot point that's, if it's not covered in the giggle, will probably be covered later, because I don't know, I liked that attention to detail. Do I think it was funny as a gag? Not really. Do I think it was interesting as a small little plot detail? Yeah, kind of. I want to see where that goes.
Setting up this idea that the Doctor, through their travels, can create these kind of reckless consequences. I mean, skipping briefly forward again, you kind of get that vibe with towards the end where he talks about invoking a superstition. Yeah, I think that's going to tie into the whole Mavity thing. I think it ties into this idea that's kind of touched on at the end of the episode, where the Doctor's sort of talking about invoking a superstition at the end of the universe, and that idea that his actions can like change parts of history and make things go all weird,
or just change the universe, and he's in like soft spaces where things ripple out and change. Yeah.
I mean, as a scene itself, I mean, I probably didn't hate it as much as like Dylan or maybe some of you guys did, but I did think it wasn't really necessary. You could have quite easily just started the story with them landing on the ship. And if you'd have given me 5 extra minutes of the Doctor and Donna on that ship instead, I'd have probably preferred it. Not to say I hated it, because I didn't. I get why it's there. I think the idea probably was, because it's still a family show, the idea is to, offset kind of the horrors to come with a bit of levity at the beginning, is my assumption of what they were trying to do there. was my guess.
So-
Yeah, I think he
So
was probably
Dylan-
worried that your kind of average viewer wasn't really was probably going to get bored before it got exciting in the actual good bit of the story, and it's like, oh, here's a funny whimsical bit to get your average person to watch, which I don't agree with. I don't think you need that. I have more faith that an audience will be able to enjoy writing that good without needing that kind of catnip. But I think that probably was the intention.
I want to know what you thought of that scene as a history guy, Dylan. Because I know you're into history.
Well, this is not going to make me very popular, but I really don't like that they cast a Indian man as Isaac Newton. I think that representing people's races accurately of real historical figures, quite important. Especially for understanding those periods and what they were like, and what kind of experiences they were, because our knowledge of the past helps form our understanding of today. And I think details like that are important, even in just a stupid bit of sci-fi.
Well, I had a discussion with my friend Quentin. For viewers, Quentin is a friend of mine who I watch Doctor Who with frequently. And we sort of came to the same conclusion. And, we're all for representation in our media, but I was not a fan of that either, because race does have an effect on historical context, I think. Isaac Newton was kind of a crazy guy who wouldn't have been able to get away with some of the shit he did unless he was an upper class white guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And
And,
if you want to do representation,
Doctor Who has
they didn't need
Doctor
to
Who
do
has set a
Isaac
precedent.
Newton. They didn't need to do Isaac Newton. They could have
No.
chosen a different historical figure to do it with who wasn't white. So it's just
Well,
I don't see any reason for it.
Doctor Who also has a precedent of representing the history aspects of its historical episodes sort of in a grounded way, like this. So if we have a historical
sometimes.
setting, well, most of what I'm saying is, if we have a historical setting, the portrayals of the historical figures are normally going to be true to history, aside from the weird sci-fi bullshit elements. And I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way.
I really didn't like
it. I think for me, I just kind of viewed it, because I didn't really bother me personally, but I kind of just viewed it in kind of Hamilton logic, in that it's kind of that heightened idealist reality. And I think the thing is, I think that it's fair for people to dislike that. That's perfectly fine. But I think Doctor Who, let's face it, has always operated in kind of a sanitized version of history anyway. That's not to say that it's always been.
There's plenty of historicals which really go warts and all about what time periods were like.
I hate to.
I think what Theris is kind of referring to there is more new Who historicals that operate in a very sanitized version of history. Me personally, I wasn't super pressed about it. And I think Doctor Who has taken so many liberties with history over the years that I just personally don't care. But I do completely understand where both Dylan and Brian are coming from.
Yeah. It's not to say I think your points are invalid. It's more so just to say that, for me, I just kind of viewed it as the lens of fiction, I guess. Do you know what I mean? I viewed it as just the heightened version of historical reality.
I was just interested to know what Dylan's thoughts were, because I know he's a bit of a history buff, and I wanted to know if he had reached the same conclusion Quentin and I had.
Now that I'm cancelled, let's move on to the good bit of the episode. So they arrive on this spaceship, and my favourite moment of the whole story happens. The sonic screwdriver is taken away.
It is literally flown out of the story. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
No, I loved that. I think one of the things I loved about this story more broadly is that it makes the Doctor feel vulnerable for the first time in God knows how long. Because the Doctor is facing an enemy with no TARDIS, no screwdriver, no nothing, that can learn everything that they can as fast as they can. And, there isn't anyone else to help them. There's no sidecast who can, sacrifice themselves. There's nothing. It's just the Doctor and Donna in this really tense situation, and you get that lovely moment towards the beginning of the episode where it really sinks in for both of them that, like, where on earth are we? Where the hell are we at? You know, are we going to get out of this? And I think moments like that is something I've really been missing from Doctor Who in the last few years.
Absolutely.
That idea that like they are in genuine danger, like they genuinely are. That's
And
not
see,
something
and
I felt.
And like this is a conversation that like me and Dylan, I know in the past have had a million fucking times about, like, you know, just getting rid of the sonic screwdriver, you know, making the audience feel that danger, because I think it's the first time, maybe not the first time ever, but you know, one of the few times in New Who when I think, you know, New Who audiences have kind of been separated from the sonic screwdriver, and I wouldn't doubt if like that's a feeling that a lot of other people had, that feeling of finally like seeing the Doctor as actually being in danger. Now, granted, these specials are also in like a pretty unique case where it's like, okay, it's 3 specials in the middle where, like, you know, kind of anything can happen, but I hope it's something that Davies continues to incorporate in his era, going forward with Shudigawa and the 15th Doctor and all that. I'd like to see that attempt to isolate the Doctor more, isolate the Doctor and his companions more often. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think the element of danger was one of the great benefits of Sonic Screwdriver, but I think it actually goes, like, sorry, the lack of Sonic Screwdriver, but I think it goes a bit beyond that. Because all of the stuff I was talking about with the great build-up, with the Doctor walking through the ship, looking at computers, looking out into space, working things out, having to move, like, you know, machines around and tinker personally, that was all stuff that wouldn't happen with a Sonic Screwdriver. In another story, the Doctor would just come on, sonic all the computers, and know everything straight away. And I feel that takes a lot away from the story, it takes a lot away from the stakes, it makes it just so much less earned, like all of the things that the character learns, because it feels like they're just using a magic wand to discover it, like a magic plot device, rather than using their intelligence and their, you know, character traits that we know and learn more about to discover things. And that's what made this build-up so good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I liked that the Doctor didn't know everything. Like that scene where he's having to kind of translate the language by himself, I thought was really nice.
Oh yeah,
where he's learning all the numbers. He's learning all the horse people's numbers.
I guess
there was like horse people apparently is who operated the ship.
They were.
I guess. Sort of horse looking, we maybe lizard looking.
We cut out again there for us.
Yeah. Did we lose both Theris and Brian at the same time?
Yes. Okay. Or maybe it's me who's lost. But just resume your thought.
I heard everything Theris said.
I did not. Yeah, you two traveled to like a different fucking dimension for a second.
Okay.
We slipped through a wormhole.
Yeah.
I was just saying that in the Unleashed, they say that the captain who got ejected they're like from like a horse species, because if you look at the hieroglyphs on the ship, they're meant to represent like where like a horse's like hoof would like scrape along, and that's how they did the language. They're like intelligent horse people.
It makes sense. It does kind of look like a horse's skull. I kind of thought maybe it was like some kind of, you know,
I thought like
reptile
like
skull.
But
that's what I thought. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think another thing I loved, because we were talking about the Doctor having to use their intelligence as their weapon. How great was it to have an alien where the Doctor thinking, which is so integral to the character, was exactly the thing that the monsters needed for them to succeed. I thought that was great, like a great subversion of like the traditional Doctor villain dynamic of, I'm going to think and outsmart you to beat you. Doing the opposite of that, where the more he thinks, actually, the stronger they get, was like such a good concept. And I'm really glad that they played on that. It just feels like, you know, I think part of the benefit of having Russell come back is because he's done so much Doctor Who before, and because he's done so much successful Doctor Who before, he's got such an understanding of the Doctor Who tropes at this point that he knows how to perfectly subvert them as well. Like the whole, you know, as we were saying as well, the whole thing with like the Sonic and stuff, he knows to get rid of that to kind of allow for story opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be there. Like there's just so much that he does here that just feels so unique, but also like it has that sense of familiarity. It feels very Doctor Who, which is, it's a weird thing to define, isn't it? Feeling Doctor Who, but this felt like a proper good Doctor Who story that like
Yeah.
anyone can enjoy, really.
Oh,
Can I
absolutely.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go, Joey.
Well, I was just gonna like I don't know like how strictly linear we're going with the episode.
Oh, I know we've kind of
desperately-
bounced about. Oh, because I was
Okay,
going to
I
move us on to
kinda like-
kind of I was going to move us on to talking about those kind of first scenes where the creature moves in. I was wondering,
Okay,
like,
so
whenabouts
like
did we
that- so-
notice?
Yeah, so like my favorite like my favorite scene in the entire episode is that first initial cut from Donna and the fake doctor to fake Donna and Doctor. And it looks like a really really awkward cut at first. I think that was just like I was watching it with a couple of our family members and we were sitting around the TV and that happened. We are like, oh, that was just a weird cut in that scene. But no, but then the scene kind of kept going on. I was like, oh wait, no, that's not a different scene that's happening like at the same time as this. It's all the same scene. And
that happened when I was watching it with Quentin.
Yeah,
too.
fucking brilliant moment.
He wasn't catching on to it at first, and then it hit him, and he turned to me and said, "Oh fuck, Brian!"
That fucking scene. So like, and then like my favorite line of the episode comes up, and it's a small thing, but it's easily my favorite line of the episode, or at least delivery, I should say. Is when fake Doctor is like sitting on the floor there as like Donna's there in her part of the room. And I forget exactly how it comes up, but the way Tennant delivers oh, that's right, we get hungry, don't we? It's so casual and so like I love, and it's because it's so casual that like attentive viewers, who I hope everyone was attentive at that point, especially considering like how the scene was building up, are like, oh wait, oh that's a really weird line. Oh wait, no, that's not just a weird line. This is not the fucking Doctor. What is going on? And it's such a good moment. Yeah, I was just absolutely in love with that whole fucking sequence.
It's really clever, actually.
You see, it's so clever.
It's just so clever. I had to sit there and have a brain blast about it.
For me, the moment where I clocked on was the scene. It's when the Doctor's in his part of the room, and Donna comes in and she says, "I did what you asked," with no sass or elaboration at all.
Yeah, that was me too.
You know as a character, Donna's not just going to sit there and go, "I did what you asked." She'd be like, "Oh, I finally got done doing those bloody things that you asked me to do."
Yeah,
it was like filing back in my old job as a temp. That's how she would respond to that. So just like having that such a kind of just minimal response, you just know that's not the character of Donna, and that kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier about this working so well because we know how these characters speak and act so well, and I think that's what makes it work as an anniversary story. I think that's what makes it so good.
On the flip side of that, though, too, somebody that isn't as familiar with the characters might take that scene and not be fazed by it.
Yeah, I think what really built up the kind of horror and dread of that bit for me was the way in which, when you realised what was happening, and you were kind of able to look at the different ways in which they were reacting, that the creatures were trying to, get themselves to blend in with the other characters. So, like, because they act very differently. So you have David Tennant's one, like the fake Doctor, be extremely chatty, and kind of just talk about Donna's personal life, family members. That's the kind of thing that's going to please her and get her to trust. Whereas with the Doctor, it just needs to kind of be like a soundboard for him. That's what he wants as a person. So like it's kind of trying to ingratiate themselves to their wants in order to disguise themselves. Yeah, and so the way it ingratiates themselves with them both kind of evolves throughout the episode, where at first it's just trying to appeal to what it thinks that they would want to hear, to then realizing, oh, that doesn't work. That you have to do things, even things that they might not like, to appear like the person they know.
The other thing I like about that scene is I think it's a lot harder to tell with the Doctor because the Doctor's already an alien. So the fact that David Tennant brings his performance in and it doesn't play it entirely different to how he already plays the Doctor anyway. David Tennant's performance doesn't betray what's going on as quickly as Catherine Tate's does because the Doctor is already an alien. And so he behaves differently. And so we have this scene where David Tennant is sitting and he's not really giving away that he's an alien creature, but when you see Donna and she walks in, she's kind of stiff and like muted, you can instantly tell that something's up.
Yeah.
I just like that little acting detail. I
Yeah.
thought it was cool.
Yeah, it's
Well,
great.
and I feel from
Yeah.
then onwards, like the after it kind of gets revealed, the bit they explore with these creatures not really having a concept of size or shape, meaning that they're struggling to kind of, perfect the forms, and even when they think, oh, we can get an advantage on them by just growing larger because then we can catch up with them faster, and they think that's a really clever idea, and all of a sudden it just means they get stuck because that concept of size is so beyond them. I thought that was all just fascinating stuff, and really a unique threat.
I love just the simple line of "my arms are too long." Like it's such a like a random line, like such a nonchalant like line, but it's one of those things that has like it's turning kind of such a weird like kind of almost normal sounding phrase, like a sort of a mocking phrase, into like this kind of haunting thing. Kind of, it did give me "Are You My Mummy" vibes from the Empty Child two-parter in a lot of ways, which I really liked. Hopefully, I didn't cut out for that.
Nope,
No, you're good.
Put all in.
Oh, good. Yeah, I think that was really good. And I also want to say, with the scene with the Doctor fixing the pipes before Donna comes in, him talking about what's going to happen to the TARDIS, and maybe it'll be worshipped as like this ancient artifact for 1,000 years, and then they'll try and burn it. Then they'll get clever and try and preserve it, and maybe it'll just a whole civilization will build around it. I thought that was a really nice scene, and him talking about how it's the only thing he's got left, because it really is. That's the only thing he's had since pretty much, the beginning, as far as most of us have seen. Like, and I think that was just a really nice character moment for the Doctor, I felt.
Yeah,
that's literally the plot of
a
a Big Finish short trip called Rise and Fall.
Yeah, I was gonna say Rise and Fall, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought of that. I wonder if that was a deliberate reference or whether it just wasn't. They just kind of had the same idea, which is entirely possible because it is a cool idea. So we kind of move on. I think we've kind of discussed the kind of excellent horror of those moments with the creatures. So
although, what did we think of the prosthetics, the extended arms, and all that?
I thought the prosthetic ones looked really good. I thought the arms looked good. I do think that some of the CGI looks a bit wobbly, but I will say I thought the kind of uncanny CGI added to the weirdness of the monster. Personally,
well,
I don't feel it really.
Listen, and I hate to
distracted
say it, but if you're coming to Doctor Who and complaining about bad special effects, you're kind of a fucking idiot. That's a.
But I do agree with Harry's though. That I do think that if any monster benefits from dodgy CGI, it's this one.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's this weird sort of like almost like uncanny valley type horror when you're looking at those extended arms and the big versions of them when they're chasing them down the hallway there. It taps into this really bizarre looking and it works so well because it's so bizarre looking side of the Doctor and Donna. I really loved it, and also it because the CG was kind of shoddy and because the prosthetics were so awkward looking, like it almost kind of made it more classic Who-esque for me in this weird way, which might have had a lot to do with why I enjoyed it. I don't know.
I think as well. I think on the topic of like just the kind of the CGI and the nature of the uncanny valleyness of it, I think once again it comes back to that thing of seeing these forms that we know so well kind of off creates a really unsettling thing, because it's like we know these characters, but the fact that we're seeing them in such a different light, I thought was fascinating. So yeah, overall, I mean, visually, like that stuff really like didn't bother me. And like you say, it's Doctor Who. Doctor Who's going to be Doctor Who. Visual effects were never part of the strong point, but I do think the uncanny valley nature really just added to it. And the bit with the jaw, it kind of gave me like Coraline vibes. Do you know when the dad?
Yes, I said this actually.
Oh shit!
Being twisted all around and stuff like that. It gave me that, which was that was a good thing to evoke if you're doing a horror. If you're doing a horror thing for kids, Coraline's like the perfect thing.
That's the kids' gothic horror, like.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that. I think that all worked really well.
What's funny in this weird way? It's like it. Almost because of the shoddiness of it. I shouldn't keep saying shoddiness because it's really good and it was clearly really effective for all of us. But it really is, I think, the first time in a while that something in Doctor Who could genuinely be terrifying to kids. Like
when was the last actually scary Doctor Who episode? That like I'm really racking my brain here because I think we've got to go back a long time.
I honestly can't think of the last. Like,
I
truly
think World
horrifying
Enough in
Doctor
Time
Who.
is a contender for truly fucking
Possibly.
Oh yeah, it did
terrifying.
have some
with-
body horror. Yeah, a bit. I would kind of describe that as more unsettling than outright scary, though.
Yeah. And scary mostly when you think about it. This is like literally like what is on the screen, what a kid is directly seeing in front of them is going to be terrifying to them.
The thing I found more scary was the psychological aspect to
Yeah,
it, to be
agreed.
completely honest. Like,
And in that way,
adult-
in that way, the horror kind of works on both levels. Then it is both physically
Yeah.
scary and psychologically scary if you think about it more.
I mean, I loved the scene of. I think obviously we're sort of going in chronological order here. I'm just going to get straight to this because I want to.
Go for
I
it.
want to
think-
just
yeah.
praise this scene. The scene where fake Donna kind of lulls the Doctor into talking about stuff that's happened, and you get that great scene of her kind of being like, with like,
Yeah.
oh, the Meta Crisis told me all that's happened to you in the last 50 years. And the Doctor's like, finally, I can open up. It's been so long, and she just dissolves away. I was like, that's brilliant. That's great.
Man.
And like the scene, and I've seen a few people say this, and it's a sentiment I echo. Like, they made me feel more for the Flux and for the Timeless Child than I did for the entirety of the previous era. In that one scene. In that
Two lines,
Dave-
practically.
Davies is making me feel consequences for actions that the 13th Doctor made. Like,
So I want to talk about that actually. Like, my biggest complaint with the 13th Doctor's run is the lack of consequences
For anything.
For,
the entire universe
for
died.
anything. And like,
There was no
I know
consequences.
Dylan's probably on the perspective of, well, that's over now, so let's just forget about it.
Yeah.
But I like to think, Doctor Who is a continuing narrative, and these things did happen, like it or not. And
Yeah, but I think we can all agree to forget the Paul McGann
I am
stuff about
liking
half
that we are not.
Dylan, shut up for 5 seconds. Let Brian talk.
I am liking that we are not ignoring it, and I'm liking that there are consequences for the Doctor's actions, because in actuality, Flux is still recent enough that you can believably do consequences for Flux at the moment. So
Yeah, but the thing
think what I
is,
like,
most of the
though-
audience didn't even watch that, and it was crap. I mean, I would have much preferred to have moved on. If we're not going to move on, then he's probably done the best of it that he can. But yeah,
The thing is,
like,
I think I would have agreed with you conceptually. I'd have preferred to move on. What I like about it, though, is that I think it's taking something that was, let's face it, a bit shit originally, and adding a whole new flavor text to it. Like the Doctor being genuinely distraught at the fact that they inadvertently caused the death of half of the universe. That's a bigger consequence
there's also
than the Time War was itself. That's a bigger thing than the Time War was. And I think treating that with weight actually was quite effective. I should say, I don't like Flux. I don't like the Timeless Child. All of that. But man, like, damn if he didn't try and make that shit work. Like, he was there.
There's also the implication that it somehow makes the Doctor kind of responsible for the situation that he and Donna have found themselves in. Like, maybe the border of the universe is closer to home than it used to be.
That's true.
Yeah, because the entities, they say stuff about, like, the noisy universe and it's yours to... I think, doesn't the Donna puddle say something about, like, it's yours to command or something like that, or yours to control? There's a line like that. And I think that just really goes to show that, like, the Doctor... And I think that comes back to the thing I was talking about with the end scene of... I like it because it's not the Doctor being important for no reason, like a lot of the Timeless Child stuff was, or even maybe some Moffat stuff. It's the Doctor being important because they have so much ability to kind of mess stuff up. And I think that being a thing that we explore more in the future is something I really like.
I will say, while I do like what that scene did for Flux, I don't know, something about the bringing up of, maybe it was just the way it was brought up. I can't quite describe what doesn't sit right with me about it. The way that the Timeless Child arc was brought up just felt really awkward and kind of unnatural with it. It's one of my few downsides of the really good most of this episode. I don't know, just something about the way that was brought up in it just didn't feel natural to me. Maybe it's because Davies doesn't really want to touch on what Chibnall was trying to imply but did nothing with in his era. Maybe it's that, but I don't know. I feel like Russell could have been bolder with that moment, like he was with how the Flex was treated. That might be it. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, you mean
I
you
do
mean-
know Quentin wasn't a fan of the scene because he actually didn't watch Flux. He stopped watching after the Timeless Children.
Said
Fair, I
so.
don't blame him. I can't say I blame him, but I think
Yeah.
here's the thing. I think at the end of the day, like it's so close. It would have been weird to just sort of because they kind of do that with Chibnall Doctor Who, don't they? Where they kind of just pretend the Moffat era didn't happen, and I do think there is a weird sense of jarriness to it. I mean, it's all down to personal. It's all down to personal preference, but
they practically
go.
ignore. Sorry, I keep stepping on you. My apologies. But they do. But they do that like even literally within the Chibnall era is they kind of forget about Flux the second it's over. Like,
Yeah. I think
so. Yeah, go ahead.
Given it's an on like because even though the show does reinvent itself constantly, it is one long running show in theory. So I like that it has those little connective bits, and I mean with the Timeless Child in particular, I quite liked that they were quite vague with it because I think that sort of implies that there's baggage to the Doctor, but we're not going to go there again. You know, it's just an added bit of subtext for the companions, sort of like. They're never going to quite know all there is to the Doctor, which I quite like as a concept.
A bit of
because
who
it annoyed me. Yeah, I mean, it annoyed me with the Chibnall companions that Yaz never found out about the Timeless Child, but given that now it's kind of passed for the Doctor, I could totally understand them just wanting to move on, kind of on a metatextual deal, and with you wanting to move on, the Doctor's in the same place. You know what I mean? They're in the place of that's happened now. I want to move on with life, and then
Lord Slug is the Doctor. I knew it.
Yeah, I thought that scene was very deftly handled overall.
Yeah, all right. So I think we'll kind of move on towards the end of it now. I thought it was quite a clever resolution where it's because the plan that had been set in motion 300 years was it 300 years ago? Yeah, 300 years ago was so slow. It was just impossible for the beings.
I think it was only 3.
Was it 3?
It was 3, not 300. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, with the kind of numbers that the episode was talking about, 100 trillion years, 300, same thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, no, I really liked the resolution. I liked because here's the thing as well with a lot of mysteries, particularly in New Who, is I think sometimes the resolutions can feel a little bit out the arse, for lack of a better term. They're a bit they're a bit all right. I think Moffat is the worst for that probably, where it's what's the resolution to this mystery? This bollocks that you never knew about. It's oh. Okay. With this, it was really good. It was so the robot's moving slowly because it's walking towards a bomb, and the reason the reason that there's that weird crashing around the ship is because the captain ejected himself so that these entities didn't get her memories and couldn't go back to it. It was all really well explained, I thought.
Yeah, and it all made sense. It was one of those episodes where it's it all came satisfyingly to the end, to the point where you could rewatch it and kind of get more out of it the second time because you could understand all these things. It's it makes sense. That lead to that naturally. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, and I'd say that was my biggest complaint with the last episode. Actually, was the resolution was just kind of all over the place,
the resolution
out. Pulled out of the furthest reaches of someone's asshole, and this one sort of neatly packed away everything that it set up.
Trillion years
I
in
liked
RTD's arsehole, the resolution to the Star Beast was found.
I think the thing with the Star Beast resolution is, I think the problem with that episode is it has to do so much to kind of establish how this premise can even happen to begin with. So you've kind of got to get a lot of that baggage out of the way. But I think now that baggage is out of the way, it allowed Wild Blue Yonder to be this thing that could be so self-contained and so well wrapped up. And I mean, I even liked the usage of Wild Blue Yonder as the TARDIS signifying to the Doctor that they're entering this kind of dangerous war area. I liked that. I thought that was neat. I mean, you could argue that the Cloister Belt does the same thing, but I don't know. I thought it worked.
Yeah. Also, with regards to kind of the end of it, I was almost half convinced they were actually going to kill off Donna And we were just
Yeah.
going to have her in the
Yeah.
next episode with the toy maker, because that could have made such an interesting
Can you
combination.
imagine? Oh my god! I mean, I know for the most part, Davies wants to keep these three episodes like pretty self-contained, each one on their own. But I would have loved that if that carried over directly into the giggle. Like that would have been so fucking good.
And that'd be
But I mean,
that would
it-
be like an actual
I'm-
really interesting thing to explore. Like the Doctor's like, oh my god, I think I understand humans, but clearly I fucking don't, because I
Yeah.
couldn't tell the difference between this imitation of my friend, and she's dead because of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say, of course, that I didn't still enjoy the ending. It didn't like take away from the ending for me, but I just
Oh, yeah.
thought for a second, like, fucking what if, like that would have been, that would have been so interesting.
What
I
if
don't
Rose
think
is
it's
licking
a
his lips?
realistic what if, because if you're going to explore that, you have to have Catherine and David back probably for more than just the next
Yeah.
episode.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. I'll be completely honest. I never thought I was going to say this, but I'm genuinely kind of sad David and Catherine are only given 3. I thought, I'll be really... Because I am really excited for Shooty, don't get me wrong. I think he's going to be good. I've seen a lot of his stuff. I think he's going to be good. But I thought initially, we've already had Tennant so much, especially in like multimedia stuff. Is it going to feel like... Is it going to feel just like an extension, or is it going to feel, worth it? Personally, I'm liking this new version of Tennant so much, and kind of this dynamic so much, and the way they're pushing these characters, that I could have quite easily had a 6-episode miniseries of this quite comfortably.
I do,
So you think
I
it's
do
a surprise
totally-
that you're feeling that, Faris? I am actually really enjoying the 14th Doctor as played by David Tennant. Me, the person
Wow.
who's got like a video with like a half dislike bar where I say Tennant's the worst Doctor.
How times have changed, eh?
Well, I have been really enjoying these. I will say I am still just as ready to move on to Shooty as I was before the specials started. Just because I don't know, I'll always be excited by more, by like more new and different Doctor Who than things I've seen before. And by like Tennant is giving a very different performance. These are very different specials from what Series 4 was. I think they're very much. There is that familiarity with them still, as we mentioned a couple times throughout this. That there is still that familiarity with Tennant and Tate. That I am still very ready to move on to something new.
Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm not like, oh no, Shooty shouldn't be coming. We should have Tennant forever. Like that's not, But I'm also just like, damn, they've really just nailed. Because I genuinely believe. I mean, I already like the 10th Doctor. I think the character arc is really good. I think Tennant was always very strong. But there's something about the 14th Doctor, man. I think it's the maturity. I think it's the lack of angst.
Oh,
He's just
definitely
kind of-
that.
He's just like being able to just fully shed his wings and play an older Doctor, and I think it really, really suits him, and I think it really works. And I mean, if we do eventually, and it kind of inevitably get Tennant back, I'd like it to be this version. I'd like it to be this version of that Doctor. That older version, that wiser version, that version who, I mean, he's still fallible, he still makes mistakes, he picks the wrong Donna. Like,
And
that's so interesting.
He still can do angsty moments when they're needed.
Yeah, but
which
it's
we
not-
literally had in this episode.
it's not the same type of angst. It's
Yeah.
a different angst. It's like it's more of the angst of someone who's just so tired with everything they've had to go through that they just want to move on. That's very different from what Tennant's Time War angst was, where it was kind of like, I miss home so much.
He's
I
just
just-
dwelling on it. Yeah.
I want to see Gallifrey again. Whereas with this, it's more, I can't bear to think about this anymore. It kind of gives like, it's kind of funny because we see a certain old soldier come back at the end of this episode. It does kind of give an old soldier trying to move on from the sins of their past, and I really like it. It's like a version of the character. I think it really works.
I agree.
Yeah. And speaking of, oh my god, he was only there for a little bit, but I loved Cribbins in this so much.
Oh, it was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
he was
sad that's
lovely.
the last thing we'll ever see of him, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because apparently he was supposed to be in the third special, but
He
he
was,
wasn't well
yeah.
enough. Yeah. So
Which
that's
sucks.
a shame. But I mean, lovely that we
And
have.
that's why they've gotten Kate Stewart in there instead.
No, don't say that.
here's-
Okay,
here's
you know
the-
what? You know what though? If if Davies can make me like so many things that I have not previously liked about New Who in these first two specials, I wonder what he can do for Kate Stewart.
Give her a personality
going-
might be a
I'm-
start.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
that would be lovely.
that's the thing. You know, I like Ruth Medley more than any of the Moffat era unit teams. So I mean,
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
you know, like
Definitely.
Low
if
bar,
you could
but
just
yes.
if they could just do that for Kate and make her have a personality. I mean, I already liked her more just by the fact that Davis wrote that she's the one taking care of Wilf because he's an old soldier. That in itself gives me more of a reason to like Kate than any of the previous stories. Like, just the idea that she's like, I'll take care of him, that's just nice. But no, I thought that whole end scene was lovely, and I mean, it was the music when everything's going wrong felt very Years and Years, which was quite fitting, I thought. Yeah, I really liked that scene a lot. I'm very excited for next week. I don't expect it to be as strong as this because there's more to balance.
No,
there's more to balance.
This is definitely the giggle's definitely going to be the loud, bombastic one of the bunch, I think.
Which is, I think, fine. I think the thing is, you've got to have that balance, don't you? You've got to have the balance of, kind of that fun family one, a bombastic one, and then a quiet, more subdued, almost classic adventure.
I just wonder how that bodes for us going forward, because Wild Blue Yonder is one of the best New Who episodes ever. I think
fucking
personally.
Doctor Who.
Yeah.
But
you have that, and I
really say that is quite impressive, especially Dylan. You'd say it's one of the best Doctor Who.
I really do fear that if the giggle is that loud, bombastic Murray Gold in your fucking face kind of episode, I wonder what Russell has learned then. If that is his immediate follow-up to Wild Blue Yonder, I'm a little worried.
See, the thing is, though, they had the good sense to hide this one and make this one almost the most special of the three. I mean, I know going into these specials, that was the one most people were the most interested in and intrigued by and excited by, and it ends up being the most simple of the three. So I think that might suggest that Russell is willing to prioritize more of those episodes going forward. I think it's inevitable you're going to have some of the bombast with Russell. I think that's just part of his style. But I think if that can be balanced out with episodes like Wild Blue Yonder, I think we can have both. I don't know. I think I'm at a point where I can enjoy both forms of Doctor Who. What the giggle will depend on for me is how it's resolved. But from the trailers, I am very excited to see the Toymaker, reimagined. I think he did a good job with Beat the Meat. I'm sure he'll do a good job with the Toymaker. Yeah, I mean, doesn't it just feel good to have Doctor Who in a competent state? Doesn't it just feel nice?
Yeah. I think I can settle for that dynamic as long as we do get these episodes every so often, because all I'm really, at this point, I'm just so ground down with New Who. All I ask for is to get a handful of episodes that are my thing, that I enjoy, and it looks most likely out of these three specials, 1 out of 3, that's a much higher hit rate than we've had for a very long time. So I'm getting something, and I'm gonna be happy with that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so let's.
What a nice
thoughts.
Natural conclusion.
Oh
wow!
Fine. We haven't said that. Yeah. Well, has anybody else got anything else to say before we go?
I think in general. Oh yeah, you go on.
I was just gonna say, can I share a little anecdote before we start to close out? So a few days ago, I received a Twitter DM from the official Doctor Who Twitter page. They had sent me back my own tweet and said, "Hey Joey, we love your review of the Star Beast. We'd love to include it in our promotional things. Just say that, confirm that you're okay with that and everything." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, definitely, whatever." I had to laugh though. I don't think I gave the most positive review. The first sentence of the tweet they sent back to me was, "Oh hey, that was actually pretty good." I don't know. and also I said "fuck" in the tweet, so I didn't know what they were gonna fucking do with it. And then they posted about tweets from social media the next day, and I was not included anyway. So I just kind of have to laugh about that. That was funny.
They accidentally said, "Yeah, let's share that this is fucking shit." It's what an interesting review.
To be fair, my use of fuck was I said beep the meep is a fucking star is what I said. So I guess I don't know. It's positive. It's a positive sentence, but I don't know if that's what they want on their social media. I don't know. It's just funny.
Yeah, no, I think for me, I think I'm probably more positive on Star Beast than I guess Dylan. For me, the Star Beast is like a 7 out of 10. It's like a solid introduction with some bits that some clunk, shall we say, to it, particularly towards the end. This was like a 9 for me.
Yeah.
There's very little outside of like maybe like the initial scene, and like maybe. Yeah, maybe I would just like more of it. Would be the only other thing I could say.
I think I agree with both of those ratings there. He's actually 7.
I think
9,
7 and 9 is where I'm at, and I mean, to be honest, if the giggle can get above a 6, we'd have a pretty solid hit rate in my books for the 60th, higher than we've had in a very long time. So
I'm just gonna say I preferred Wild Blue Yonder to the Star Beast, and if you want to know more about my opinion on the Star Beast, go check out my YouTube channel.
Oh no! Don't check out Briar Harder 2. Actually, if you're going to, if you're gonna check it out, dislike it. So
end the video, Dylan. We can't let them have these shameless plugs in this.
See, that's the great thing about me being here is I don't have any Doctor Who things to promote, so I'm the best guest.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just leave it on just the astounding feature that is going to blow the minds of long-term viewers of my channel. I'm giving a 9 out of 10 to a Russ T. Davis, David Tennant, and Catherine Tate Doctor Who story.
Oh wait, are we giving 9s all across the board then?
Oh yeah,
I think
10
so.
if they remove the first scene. It's a 10. That's the only thing that dampens it for me. Not really much else wrong with it, to be honest. It's proper quality Doctor Who. It's one
it's
that
a new
is
favorite for sure.
Is it in top 5 New Who? Probably. I'd say so.
Maybe top 10.
Yeah, top 10. I need to have a look at all the other episodes before I decide where it would land, but it's definitely I think it will stand as one of the all-time great Doctor Who stories. I think it genuinely will. I think there will be people who look back on this with the same fondness that people look back on things like The Young Child or things like Midnight from RTD's first era. I think it does have the staying power of either of those, whilst also being very, very original and very creative in its own right. Like I'm imagining, because what Doctor Who is about as well, like the family and the kids and stuff. I can imagine kids going around schools with pretending their arms are longer than they actually are. And stuff like that. That's the sort of thing I could totally imagine, and that's what Doctor Who should be. So yeah, I think just very good stuff. But if we get more of that for this coming era, I think we're really onto a winner. I mean, if Lord Slar likes RTD stories, then they've done it right. They've done it right.
Is this possibly the most positive New Who centric Lord Slar video ever?
World Nothing Time panel discussion, possibly similar levels.
Possibly, yeah.
That's fair. That is very good as well. I mean, I would say this is probably the best episode since World of Time. Probably
easily, probably better than World Nothing Time, if I'm honest. I'd say it is.
Yeah,
probably best since Heaven Sent, as I do think it's slightly better than Oxygen.
Wow, that's very high praise.
Yeah, and I think just let's find. I know I've said let's end it on this. I promise, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I thought this was an excellent 60th special. It's the exact kind of special I've been asking for years. It's not a cameo fest. It's not self-indulgent. It tells a brilliant Doctor Who story. It shows us the best of Doctor Who by telling us a good story. And that is a much better celebration than any fan wankathon is ever going to have. And to the people saying, I didn't like it because it didn't have 50 cameos in, just... what do you want? Do you actually want good television, or do you just want to fill out a wiki article about who's met who?
I'm so glad you've said it, because that's been a sentiment that's really been annoying me with this episode, is that the director outright came out and said, don't go in expecting a bunch of cameos. It's not that type of story.
And then everyone was like, "Oh yeah, you're fucking lying, right?" It's like,
and then people came out of it going, "Oh, it was bad. It doesn't feel like a 60 if I was expecting more cameos." It's like they told you they weren't going to be in it.
It didn't even have 50 TikTok moments.
That's your own fault for having expectations that it was never going to meet. And also, just briefly, I know we keep saying let's end it, but I want to say this as well.
Got more endings than Lord of the Rings right here.
we've literally, when you think about it, when you actually think about it, you sit down and think about it. We've had literally every classic Doctor come back to the new series at least once in some form. We've had a plethora of classic companions. We've had, all sorts of stuff. Like a lot of the classic Who monsters that are like iconic, they've done. So I do have to wonder, at what point is there enough cameos? Is there enough nostalgia? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there necessarily needs to be Peter Capaldi in an episode for it to be an anniversary. Remembrance of the Daleks is a good example of where that's just a story that also feels celebratory. And
that's not even the official. That's not even the official anniversary episode. Silver Nemesis.
No, it's not. Silver Nemesis is right. No one considers Silver Nemesis the official one because it's terrible. But like, do you know what I mean? I'd much prefer a story that was good on its own merits than, like you were saying, like a cameo fest. I don't think that's what it should be about, and I think that's the exact sort of thinking that leads you to things like, well, the current Marvel slop, where it's just, look at the old guy we got back. It's not what I want Doctor Who to be.
Honestly, curse the 5 Doctors for actually managing to make a cameo fest semi-decent. Because if that had been a gigantic failure, you bet we wouldn't be having everybody expecting a cameo fest every time. But because it just had to be actually kind of good, because written by Terrence Dicks.
I also just want to say, you've got David Tennant and Catherine Tate back. Isn't that fucking enough? Isn't that enough? God damn it!
I'm a classic Who fan who doesn't even like that era. I think it's enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. Like, I think sometimes Doctor Who fans act too much like children with jangling keys. They're like, "Ooh, it's the thing I recognise, bright colours." It's my exact problem with Power of the Doctor. It's not a Doctor Who episode. It's a museum. It's not a story. It's just, here's Ace. She wore a baseball. She wore a baseball.
Ace is a baseball bat.
She wore a jacket and carried a baseball bat around.
She wore a baseball bat. She balanced it on her head for that long. It was amazing. Skill.
No, I completely agree with you. I'd much rather a good episode that just so happens to have, two of the best actors like Doctor Who's had doing a good story than, hey, look, so it's Peter Davison and Paul McGann and Christopher Eccleston meeting the Zarbi. Like, I don't need that.
Nick Briggs is taking notes.
I would actually watch that.
Yeah.
And that is why Doctor Who has so much wrong with it. And on that beautiful note, thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for my panelists for coming on and, waxing lyrical about this fantastic story for an hour.
No problem.
Yay.
Yeah. Bye.
Fare ye well, and we'll see you back next week for the giggle, for hopefully resuming, well, actually not hopefully resuming, hopefully not, but probably resuming our usual moan fest. Goodbye.